So if you do need to bail at any stage, the recording of today's session will get thrown up onto our YouTube channel tomorrow. But please don't bail. Mia and I want you all to hang with us for as long as possible. As normal, use the chat box as well. If anyone wants to say hi, literally just type hi into the chat box and then realize that you need to tick all panelists and attendees, because otherwise what happens is I've just said hi to Mia, which is really not that exciting for her. And we'll give everyone just a couple of minutes to join us. A smaller but more vocal crowd today, which is what I'm hoping for, because we're talking about all things basically bossing your own career. Isn't that right, Mia?
Yeah, exactly.
And as anyone knows who's been on one of the webinars before, these are literally coaching sessions. The EW boys had a discussion literally prior to this session asking about how the hell we develop one of our offshore team members, because I am shit at business, not business development, okay at that, terrible at team development. So I was hoping Chris was going to do all of that. Yes, all about me today with a little bit of help from everybody else. We've got polls that we're going to ask as we go, and some other stuff will come up at the end about how you can find out what Mia's going to do for us at our conference in February, and also her online course that she is building. For any of you that don't know who Mia is, she's an award-winning advisor, and basically the part of the dream team at Everlesco. Pretty much JT and Marshall have been pushed to the background now, and Mia is just front and center, which makes a lot of sense. And you'll understand why today when she starts sharing how she basically developed herself instead of sitting back and waiting for somebody else. So guys and girls, welcome. And without further ado, I'm going to hand control over to Mia. And Mia, you can just take the screen whenever you want. I will hide my video. Does everyone like my outfit today? You can see I've continued my professional services mode with my hat and my jacket. So we're going to give it to Mia while she's getting ready. And I will chime in with questions from time to time.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Steve. And as always, thanks for the great introduction. So my webinar today, and a little bit of a highlight on the course that I'm putting together as well, is just around what you can be doing to further develop yourself in order to sort of take control of your own career path. So as part of today's presentation, there we go. What I'm going to be covering off is a little bit about who I am and why I'm giving this course and this webinar today, and why the course is being developed in the first place. I'll be covering off as well a little bit about the benefits of doing the course for the business that you work in, for the clients that you have contact with, for yourself, most importantly, why this is beneficial. And then going through what is the starting point. So what do you need to be focusing on initially to get this started for yourself? I'm going to take you through a D.R.E.A.M Job Design profile. And then we're going to go through uncovering some blockages. So whenever you're talking about what the next steps are, you really need to actually pay attention to what the blockages might be, or the things that are going to slow you down as well. So then acknowledging those and working through those is really going to increase the probability of you actually being able to achieve what you're setting out to achieve. And then I'm just going to take you through what the next steps would be, and a little bit about what to expect at LTMA and the course in general as well. So firstly, who am I? And a little bit about my background. So I started my advice career a little over 11 years ago, and I started working in just basic admin. I didn't know financial advice existed. I kind of just accepted a role while I was getting myself ready to attend fashion college, and fell in love with what advice actually was. But what I've also discovered from my initial sort of entry point was that there wasn't really any kind of development program. And that is the case between working in really small companies. So I've worked in companies where it's been literally me and one other person. And then I've worked in really large corporates as well, where I'd be one of 500 or one of 2,000. And the bigger companies may have had a little bit more structure, but it was, again, you were sort of just treated like a number. So it wasn't personalized. I eventually moved back into smaller businesses and have certainly decided that I'm more suited to smaller companies. And within the roles and my own sort of career progression, I started in admin, worked my way into client service, and then decided that I wanted to manage teams. So I started managing client service teams as sort of like a team leader role, and then into particular management for a larger company as well. And a lot of what I have put together in the course, a lot of what I'm developing is based on some of the things that I've used with managing other people, but then also what I have learned and applied for myself to make sure that I am continuously learning and developing and pushing forward to what my next goal in my own career would be. I have received a significant amount of personal and professional coaching as well. So I have invested in my own development, and I've received a lot of one-on-one coaching with advice professionals, but then also Everlesco have invested in my coaching as well with external parties. So that has helped me sort of shape what it is that I need to be focusing on, and I'm looking at sharing the key learnings that I've experienced as part of this webinar and as part of the course, and a little bit around the presentation at LTMA as well. As Steve's already mentioned, I am an award winner, and I won the AFA NZ Rising Star Award in 2017. And since then, I have certainly had a lot of opportunities to present at speaking arrangements, but then also hosting webinars and sharing pretty much what I do, why I love it. And I pretty much love doing that because I do want to see other people develop, and I do want to see other people have the opportunities that I'm certainly receiving now. And I'm completely aware that I wouldn't be in the position that I am right now if I hadn't taken the initial steps to really review what it is that I wanted to achieve in my career and take the steps necessary to make sure that I was able to do those things. And that's exactly what I'm going to be walking you guys through today. It's those initial phases and those initial questions that you need to work through in order to take control of your own career path and make sure that you are moving forward or in the direction that you want to be. You have heard a little bit about me, but I would love to know a little bit about everyone on the webinar. So Steve, can you kick off the first poll question for me, please?
Yep, just started it up now. So any of you that haven't done a Zoom poll before, it's pretty easy. They'll pop up and you either get multi-choice or single choice. I think all of these are single choice. So there's 3 questions here, which Mia will walk through. And we need all of you answering these questions, because unless we get a 75% vote, we don't move forward. So this is not a democracy, people. This is whatever the opposite of a democracy is. Everybody has to vote. So, well, actually, no, you probably are. What is it? It's like Australia, not America. It's not a voluntary vote. Everyone has to vote, or we're going to send fines. Fines around to everybody. So we can see the votes coming through. Mia, when you were putting these questions together and you're going about you, it's always hard doing polls, like knowing what to ask. Why do you want to know the answers to these questions?
Sure. Well, I'd just love to gauge as to who is listening right now, to then work out where I probably need to spend a little bit more time, or again, a little bit more feedback as to the type of people who are interested in the content that I'm putting together as well. So with the initial one, if you can let me know what your current position is, because that's really going to help me understand where you are currently, but then maybe what you're thinking about moving into. And then with the second one, looking at what your expectations are of your employer when it comes to supporting your career development. So thinking about what it is that you expect at this point in time.
We need that 15th person to vote. Oh, we've just had somebody else join the webinar, which one, congratulations. Join us. There we go. We're at 75%. Amazing work, people. So we are nearly there. Answer's still hammering through. Great work. So we're just going to let you guys go for another, say, 15, 20 seconds, and then we will close the poll off and have a look at the results. Looks like we're winding up, and all right, we'll shut that one down, and I'll share that results. We'll show those results with everybody now. So Mia, you got those there?
Yeah, I've got them. Okay, that's cool. It's quite a few advisors looking to take it to the next level. What else have we got here? Expectations. Yeah. Cool.
And I always like asking our webinar guests whether or not the results from the polls is what you thought you were going to get.
Yeah,
in terms
of who's actually there in current roles. So it's good to see there's some client service gurus there, associate advisor, a couple more advisors than I thought maybe would be attending, but good to see. And then in terms of actual development, that's kind of what I expected. I didn't realise we had the motivational one in there as well, but good to see a few more people have selected purpose than I expected there. But I'll go through the motivational levels in a little bit more detail further on. But
so guys and girls, remember, if you've got questions as we're going, please use the Q&A box. Otherwise, keep using the chat box.
Cool. All right. So now to get off my face, there we go. So why the course is being put together, and I have already sort of highlighted this to a degree, but where you are now and where you want to be, there is a gap. And what I would like to be able to do is give you the tools that you need to close that gap as quickly as possible with as little mistakes along the way. So for me, I'm really just going back through everything that I've learned over the last 11 years and pulling out all of the key things that would have meant that I could have ended up where I am right now a lot faster if I'd known about them and applied them. So that's the whole premise behind pulling this course together, and what I'm going to be sort of highlighting today and giving you a bit of a taste for. So it's really important at this stage that you do recognize that the course is designed to highlight the things that you need to be doing. So it's not based on you looking at these concepts and expecting someone else to come along and do the hard work for you. You are the one who needs to be fully aware of what you're trying to target and analyzing your strengths, your abilities, and the areas of development that you need to be focusing on in order to then move ahead. So a lot of what I'll be taking you through today is sort of a reflective questioning to then go, all right, at the end of today's webinar, you should be really close to understanding with crystal clear clarity exactly what your target is, because that's step one. Step one is to know exactly where you want to be. And I know for me, I wasn't 100% sure as to I wanted to be an advisor, and that was probably one of the things that had slowed me down. But then once I'd actually gained that clarity and had really understood that was exactly what I wanted, that's when things changed, and that's when things really ramped up for me. And I feel like within the working environment, too often people accept that a job is a job and you may not need to feel completely satisfied in the work that you're doing. And I really disagree with that, because you spend really a huge amount of your life working. So if you're not constantly feeling a certain level of achievement or a certain level of challenge from the work that you're doing and having some enjoyment out of it, it will impact on your health, it'll impact on your relationships, and it really can be extremely detrimental to yourself. So making sure that you are happy within your work environment is extremely important. So I'll highlight quickly the benefits of this concept to the business and the clients that you're working with. So a lot of financial advice businesses particularly the small to medium size, don't have a HR, feature. They don't have the kind of infrastructure in place to sit down and map out development plans, training plans, and coaching for staff members. And really what this leads to is staff members either not feeling fulfilled in their work and being unhappy and disengaged, or you personally not moving ahead because there's no one there who even understood that you wanted to. So part of this course will be designed on giving you the tools so that you can actually apply this within the business that you're working within. And then that obviously leads to being highly engaged and motivated. So the business is going to benefit from you actually showing up at work and enjoying what you're doing and knowing that everything that you're doing is taking you a step closer to the end goal or the target position that you're after. So that improves business culture, and who doesn't want to do that? And will ultimately lead to better client outcomes. So if you have never noticed in your interactions with clients, when you're in a good mood and you're feeling like on top of the world and you're having a phone call with a client, the outcome of that phone call is usually going to be more positive because you're bringing such good energy towards the client outcome anyway. So it's really important that you are understanding that this course is designed to really highlight the things that the business may not be supporting you with right now and giving you the tools that you can adapt and apply within your current work environment that leads to really good outcomes for clients as well as the business. And then on a personal level, so you'll end up being a better version of yourself. And ultimately, who doesn't want to be making some improvements to their self on a regular basis? You would end up being more fulfilled in your daily activities because you know everything that you're doing is forming or helping you move towards a goal. So knowing that on a daily basis, if you're having a challenge, you're having a challenging conversation with a client, for example, that client conversation might help shape what you're doing the next day. So if you're using some of the reflective techniques and tools that I'll be sharing, it's going to help you move forward and improve on the following day. You'll have clear directions. So I've already mentioned the importance of this, but knowing exactly what you're aiming for is going to be really helpful and increase the probability of you actually being able to achieve it. Better level of self-awareness. So some people completely lack self-awareness and others have a really high degree of self-awareness. So throughout the coaching that I'll be providing, you'll be increasing your level of self-awareness. And the reason why this is important is because you need to be able to recognize the areas of your personal weaknesses. And if you, at the moment, feel like you are already killing it in all areas of your life, perhaps you are, or perhaps you are lacking a little bit of self-awareness to be able to recognize that there are always some areas where we need to improve. The other area or the other side of that is being self-aware enough to know how you're impacting the others around you and what that can then lead to better relationships, both with work and personally as well. So then the other part is around harnessing a growth mindset and cultivating the right attitudes to maximize performance. So I won't be going into this in extreme detail in today's webinar, but it certainly is a large part of the course. But understanding how you can better manage your own personal mindset in order to make sure that every single day you're performing at your best. And there will always be external challenges that we need to face, and I'll highlight a couple of those in the webinar, but making sure that you're rocking up to work and you are in the right mindset to make sure that you are doing exactly what you need to be doing and delivering on the outcomes that you're trying to be doing as well. So that's at an overview, I guess, of the personal benefits that are to be gained from paying attention to your own career path and mapping out a little bit of a guide as to what you should be doing. So I'm sure a fair few of you are already familiar with Maslow's hierarchy. And for those that need maybe a refresher on it or can't really remember hearing about Maslow, he is a famous American psychologist who put together the hierarchy of needs. with a basic understanding of you must meet the bottom needs before you can get to the top. So it's kind of like, you know, the foundation that you need to have in place to then move ahead. So if you're looking at your survival needs, these are your basic fundamentals. So, you know, food, water, shelter, that kind of thing. So you must have those things in place before you can then get to the security level, which is where you have a sense of stability in your life and you are free of threats and you're feeling, you know, relatively safe, to then get to the belonging, which is really where your relationships come in. So that's the sense of community, that's having someone to love in your life, and to be loved by as well. So that's, you know, the initial sort of three, which then get you to a level of importance, which is where things like how important you feel on a regular basis, or the acknowledgement that you need in your life, or a sense of esteem or self-esteem comes from as well. To then get to the point of self-actualization, which is really the key sort of focus for most people, which should be, how do I get to the point in my life where I feel like I'm on top of everything, I'm in control of everything, and I'm overall a high achiever. The reason why I'm highlighting Maslow's hierarchy of needs is because within an employment phase, or within a respect of looking at how you would put this together for yourself, is there's no use in targeting self-actualization if you don't have your security and your survival under control. So it's looking at those areas of your life to work out, well, what do I need to change in order to get those things sorted out, to then be targeting self-actualization. And there are a lot of people who actually disagree with the fact that you can ever reach self-actualization, that it's always an aspirational level. But I disagree. I think you can get there, but perhaps you won't always stay there. Maybe you'll drop back down into the lower levels before you can then go back up. But it is one of those things where if you're an advisor who's listening right now and you have staff members, you might be able to see there that if you have someone who is a high achiever, loves to inspire others and find ways to help others, then you might already have someone who is reaching that self-actualization point within your business. But if you have someone who is always off sick, they're in work and they're complaining constantly, they're barely getting the minimum requirements completed, then perhaps they're sitting more in the security or the survival space. And being able to apply this to yourself, but then also look at others to work out, well, what else is going on at home that's impacting their ability to show up at work? And for yourself, what do you need to change in your life to make sure that you are increasing your chance of actually getting within the top three of the Maslow's hierarchy? So that's Maslow's for you when it comes to looking at your career development. So what do you want? As I mentioned, I wasn't 100% clear as exactly what I wanted. And I've spent a lot of time asking myself this question throughout particular periods of my life. So whenever you're faced with a hard challenge to overcome, whether it be a relationship, a health issue, or a point in your career where you need to make a decision, you really need to uncover exactly what you want. And if you end up just pushing through or just running with the punches on, you know, what opportunity presents itself, you're not really going to end up solving the ongoing issues that you might have. So it's really around focusing in on exactly what you want, which is what I'm going to take you through next, is some of the tools to use to uncover that, because it can be a really difficult question to answer. So we're looking at personal values to begin with. So what is most important to you? And the way that you're going to answer that is really dependent on what your core values are. So if you've never really gone through an activity where you've uncovered what you truly value, then as part of the workbook that I'll have available, this will be an activity for you to complete to actually try and uncover what your core values are. And the reason why this is really important to start off with is because you can go through life working with different people and different companies, and something will always feel off. You'll never really feel completely fulfilled in the work that you're doing if your core values don't align with the business that you're working for. So this can be a massive deal breaker when it comes to working for a business where there might be, the pay might be great, the location's awesome, but you don't completely agree with the way the business is managed, or you don't completely agree with the way that the business is structured or the clients that they're targeting. So I always look at the example that I had where my core values really didn't align with some of the previous businesses I've worked with, and I didn't recognize it straight away. It wasn't until I'd gone through the exercise to uncover what my core values really were to then work out, well, that was perhaps why I wasn't really that happy where I was working. And it's also one of the reasons why I'm exceptionally happy where I work now, because my core values align so strongly with Everlesco's. And I didn't write the core values when I joined. When I joined and I discovered them, I was like, well, that's fantastic to know because they line up almost exactly. So it's quite rare for that to happen, but I am just lucky that I've been able to find a company like Everlesco where it does align so well. So I'll give you guys a taster of the workbook so that you can work through your own personal values, because it's really important to have a clear understanding of that, which is going to help you map out your dream job design, which I'm getting to in a moment. Motivation. So understanding your personal motivations is also going to really help you with designing your dream job, but then also, well, it helps in life. So going through each of these, there's 5 fundamentals when it comes to key motivators. So the first one being achievement. So if you're always wanting to improve and always wanting to achieve meaningful goals. Affiliation. So if you're driven to be a team player who values collaboration over competition. Power. So energized by status, recognition, control over the team and the organization. Normally money can fit into power as well. Autonomy, so if you seek control over work and direction, or purpose, because you have a desire to be something larger than yourself. Now, when I went through this activity, very clearly achievement stood out for me. I'm extremely goal-driven and I'm always very focused on what's next. But uncovering your motivations isn't always a positive, or it can't always be a positive thing. So understanding how that could work in a negative place as well. So if you are also motivated by achievement, understanding that you might need to set a goal to reflect on what you're achieving. So if you're highly goal driven and you're always focused on what's next, you may not celebrate the wins. I know I certainly struggle with that. So taking the time to sort of uncover what it is that your motivation improves, but also how it can be a disadvantage as well. So it is one of those things where it's a bit of a double-edged sword, and you do need to take the time to work through how it benefits you, but then also what it might be preventing you from doing as well. So now we get to dream job design. Now, this is the first sort of key component in working out what your target is. So why do you want the particular role that you want, and what does that role look like? So I'm going to take you through what the DREAM actually stands for, and I will give you guys a workbook to complete after this to make sure you actually sit down and do this, because it's one of those things where if you can paint the clearest picture of what your goal is and you can refer to it, you're far more likely to achieve it. So the first part is around development. So thinking about either the business that you're in or the target business you would like to be in, is development part of the business's core values? Does the business provide you with structured learning opportunities? Is there learning opportunities provided internally or is it externally? Is there someone that you can learn from? Is there a mentor? Is there a reimbursement for training opportunities? So these are the types of questions that you need to ask yourself when you're thinking about the type of business that you want to work in or the dream job that you're targeting. So development is number one. Then we get to relationships. So if you're spending, say, a third of your life at work, it's kind of important that you get along with the people that you work with. Now, that's not always going to be the case, but understanding how you best work with other people can help you uncover what you need out of the relationships at work. So if for you, you would love to work in a place where you can come in, you can sit down and do your work without interruptions, and you can catch up every Friday afternoon and see how everyone's going, then that's part of what you should be writing down in relationships. If you would prefer to come in and have general chit chat, get to know your colleagues really well, perhaps you go out for drinks most nights, that is, again, what you should be writing down, because this is the type of working relationships that you want to be able to have. The other thing is understanding, how does the business handle toxic relationships? And by that I mean, we've all probably worked with someone who comes in and is really disengaged and really negative and an extremely draining type of personality to be around. So understanding what the business would do in that case to make sure that that's not going to be, contagious throughout the business, to make sure that there is someone there who is going to address it, and it's not just up to you personally to do it. So they're the kind of things that you should be thinking about when it comes to relationships. Then we get to environment. So what does the office environment look and feel like? Do you have natural light? Is it an open plan, or are you in your own office? Is it located close to where you live, or do you want to work within the city? Are there tea, coffee, fresh fruit, all those kinds of things that if you can paint your ideal role, what are the things that you would like to have within your working environment? Another thing could be around being close to public transport if you don't live near work, and making sure that you're cutting down on perhaps your commute time. Then we get to acknowledgement.
Mia, can I just chuck a question at you?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if my camera was on. Oh, there I am. I'm good. I'm there. See, that's natural light. Am I pointing at the right window? The Experience Wealth office in Port Melbourne has no natural light. So I had to give the boys in the office and the team in the office vitamin D tablets, because, they weren't let out at all, ever. So, that was part of it. But clearly I'm coming live from what we call the East Bentley office, which is the Crawford residence.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time these days anyway, I think we're in the office collectively like one day out of 5. I know a lot of practices are moving towards, either work from home or work remotely. How much do you see that playing into the psychology of this trade-off between development and flexibility? Because I know it's really hard to, or do you think it's harder to train people and develop people, or be developed yourself, if you are working from home on your own versus going into a shared environment?
Yeah, I think having flexibility at work is really important, but I also think having the opportunity to be face-to-face with your colleagues is needed as well. It's one of those things where you need to kind of have a bit of balance. And when it comes to the options of having some development, you're either going to be completely self-driven and working at home works well for you, but you're also going to have to be extremely self-driven on your own development opportunities, and then making the most of the time when you are in the office and you are with your colleagues, and you can schedule the time for the feedback that's required to know, yes, you are meeting your targets. Yes, you are, delivering what you're supposed to be delivering on for the business as well. So it's one of those things where, depending on your personality, you can enjoy the perks of the flexibility of working from home, but only if you are then scheduling the time to make sure that you're doing the check-ins when you are in the office.
Cool.
Yeah.
I just wanted to turn my camera on and ask the questions.
That's all right. Thanks. So with acknowledgement, so the easiest way to think about this one is, do you need to have credit for the ideas that you develop? Because for some people, if you come up with a great idea and it's implemented by someone else, and they get the credit for it, that would be a massive deal breaker. For other people, you might be so focused on the outcome you don't really care about the credit of it at all. So understanding what kind of acknowledgement that you need as an individual, and again, writing it down in your workbook. But then also the other part of it is just working on, do you need to have constant feedback on what you're doing? So do you need to have the whole praise on an ongoing basis? Or are you completely able to work autonomously and just have the general check-in every now and again to say you're doing a good job? So that's where acknowledgement comes in, and understanding what you personally crave and need from this kind of space to make sure that it is something that you can either raise with particular managers or superiors, or work on building into your own kind of development plan. And finally, the last part of the dream job design profile is money. So we are at work and we do want to get paid, but how you get paid does vary. So looking at what is the target kind of income that you would like to receive for the work that you're doing. Now, this isn't enough for you to go, I would just love to earn, 200K and I'll have a dream job. That'd be great. You need to work out what it is that you're targeting and how that payment comes in. So is your goal role to have a huge salary and that's it? Would you like to have salary and a bonus? How would that bonus structure be constructed? All of that kind of thing is what the money piece is. And throughout part of the course is around how you manage these kind of conversations with your employer. But I also think it's really important to highlight that you can't just go in and ask for a huge pay rise and not put the work in that's required to receive it. So when it comes to thinking about money and designing your dream job role, it is important to sort of understand what for you would like to receive and how you would be receiving it. Because for some people, having a bonus is a huge motivator. So making sure that you are kind of targeting having, a salary plus bonus, or, a small salary and a large bonus opportunity, depending on how you would be more motivated and what's really going to, appeal to you the best. So that is an overall sort of summary as to what the dream job design profile actually is. Now we work towards what is blocking you or what is stopping you. So I often work with clients on goal setting and coaching through why they're not achieving things. And that really is sort of uncovering what are the blockages. So looking initially at external blockages, and as you'll see, some of these are in the dream job design profile anyway, but your environment. So if you are currently lacking stability at home, so if you are moving around a lot, or you don't feel like you've got roots, or you don't live anywhere near where you would like to be working, that's what a blockage would be when it comes to your environment. The other thing is money. So if you currently don't financially have the funds in place to either move closer to where you want to be working, or to invest in your education and your development, then that's, again, a blockage which you're going to need to be able to address. And then we get to relationships. So this one is around having the people in your life to support you. So this is around financial support. It's around the emotional support of knowing that at the end of the day, when you're going home, there's someone there who is there to sort of support you throughout what you're trying to do. So in some cases, there might not be a support network. So you might not have the family that you need close by. You might not be in a relationship, or you're in a bad relationship. And that's where relationships can really pull you back. And it is an extremely hard thing to overcome as well. And when I was going through Maslow's hierarchy before, it is one of those things which is going to prevent you from moving ahead as well. So relationships is a difficult one, but it's extremely important to acknowledge if that is one of your blockages and to be able to work through it. So then we get to internal blockages. So lack of direction being number one. And again, the purpose of going through the reflective questions that I'm asking, completing the dream job design profile, is to get a really clear direction in place. So what is it that you're trying to achieve? And as I've said, once you work through that, you're more likely to be able to achieve it because you know what you're targeting. Then misalignment of values. So part of why I was getting you guys to think about your core values is because if you end up targeting this role in a particular company, for example, and you get there and there's a massive misalignment of values, well, you're not going to love it. So you need to be able to be aware as to what your values are. It's going to help you work for a business which you end up thriving in, not just trying to get by. And then we get to self-limiting beliefs. This is a big one. So if you ever have that voice in your head which is telling you, you can't do that, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, this is where self-limiting beliefs come in. And this is something which is definitely going to hold a lot of people back. It's certainly something that I personally have struggled with in the past as well. And I find from speaking to a lot of other females, it's a thing that we all sort of have. It's that, thought or the little voice that comes up and pops up whenever you don't want it there to say, what are you doing? That's not for you. You can never do that. So how you overcome self-limiting beliefs is a lot around the mindset piece, which I've touched on. And for the sake of today's presentation and making sure that I don't run over time, I'm going to give you guys one tool to use to be able to overcome this. So developing your own personal highlights reel. Now, what this is an activity to perform on thinking about a time in your life where you were under an extreme amount of pressure or you faced a massive challenge, but the outcome was better than you expected. So when I was first asked to think about this, I was trying to think of a time where I was under a huge amount of pressure. It was a very challenging time, but the outcome exceeded expectations. And I thought about when I was in high school, I was going to state drama ensemble auditions, and I remember the drive there, as my mum was driving there, was extremely stressful. And by the time that I arrived, I had an absolute massive dramatic meltdown about the fact that I could never make state drama ensemble, and completely was bawling my eyes out, having an absolute meltdown. To then have the audition and it be one of the best auditions I've ever given. So the outcome of that was I had a very dramatic meltdown for absolutely no reason, and that I was able to give an absolutely amazing audition, and it exceeded my own expectations. So then the purpose of this kind of activity is to then transpose the context of that memory. And what you end up doing is developing your own personal highlights reel. So then the next time that you're faced with a challenging situation where you begin to doubt your own abilities, you pull out the highlights reel. So then I can go, remember that time where you're being absolutely ridiculous and you ended up smashing it? Yeah, so you are capable of doing more than you actually believe. And that's the purpose of developing this. So I would highly encourage, if anyone else has issues with self-limiting beliefs, to go through that activity, to try and pull up a memory that perhaps you've suppressed a little because it was really challenging or stressful at the time, and then use it when you need it. If anyone does any public speaking or presenting, it's also probably thinking about maybe the first time that you did that. I know for me, I certainly surprised myself as well. So looking at those kind of opportunities to then replay when you need it. All right, so what's next? Having this sort of conversation or having this kind of thought process to work through to map out what it is that you're targeting, but then also applying it. So I have sort of highlighted a few different areas for people to think about. I'm going to provide the workbooks to help you workshop it a little bit more. But then also when it comes to understanding your blockages and sitting down and taking the time to write out what they are and potential ways to overcome them. So then it's around looking forward. So what else do you need to be looking at doing? And there are a huge amount of other things that you could be doing to develop your own career or take control of your own career path. For the sake of today's webinar, I can't go into absolutely everything, but I would also like to sort of highlight that I am putting this course together, but I also will be presenting at LTA, and I can quickly highlight a little bit about what that will sort of look like. So I'm sure a lot of you are already aware of it, but if you're not, that this will be the first kind of conference of its kind. And it's the point of difference really will be around day one, you'll be sitting with particular presenters and you'll be understanding the concepts and the theory behind everything. And then day two will be when you're actually completing the practical elements of it. And then if you are still really hungry to know more or to continue to develop on the ideas that you're actually receiving, then that's when the post-conference stuff kicks in. So that'll be around whether or not you enroll in the courses. Some of the courses will have the opportunity to have ongoing coaching calls with the presenters as well. But it will be one of those things where if you really want to spend the time to further develop yourself, and you can acknowledge that there's a benefit in doing that, then coming along to this kind of event is something which is going to be a massive game changer. Yes, Steve.
So one thing, I'm back. So one thing I know that I get excited about with obviously this conference is the idea of the Coach's Corner, or what we're calling the Arthur Miller Death of a Salesman Studio. Anyone who reads the IFA article today might realise that there's a whole bunch of financial advisors that hate my guts right now, but that is fine. Just feel free to read it later. You'll understand why. But the Coach's Corner is about everyone having access to you guys, you and all the other speakers, to basically help them build stuff. Because I think that's one of the biggest issues in not just, webinars and conferences in general. Yeah. We talk a lot of the theory stuff, but then everyone goes, well, that's great, but I don't know how to get started. And then when I get stuck, I don't know how to get past the bit that I get stuck on. So what's day one is you going through start to finish. Here's how you built your own development plan. And day two, you'll start to pull it apart.
Yeah.
When you're sitting in the Coach's Corner at your table and people are coming over asking for your help on building stuff, what things do you think they'll probably, if you use your gut instinct, what things do you think they're going to probably ask you for the most help with, based on your experience of where you think people get stuck the most?
Yeah. I mean, I think once you sort of uncover what it is that you're targeting, so that can be a massive hurdle for some people, but then also how do you have the more challenging conversations with managers, such as how do I get the promotion, or the pay review discussion, but then also maybe around when is it time to acknowledge that perhaps it's time to move to a new role, and how do you actually,
or a new employer,
and then what do you do to make sure that the new employer is a better option and you actually are successful in that interview as well. So I think my understanding as it would be at the moment, they're probably the main things that people might want to do or discuss further. And I think the one-on-one kind of conversations that I can have in the Coach's Corner will be quite valuable, I think, just to sit down and go, right, what is your actual situation right now? What other personalities are at play here to kind of uncover options there.
So maybe that's an opportunity now just to go to our chat and even the Q&A, whichever medium you guys and girls want to use first. Like, what if you were having a one-on-one session with Mia right now, and you can do it as a private if you want to. You just select panelists instead of all panelists and attendees. Like, what are some of the challenging positions that you're in right now, or that you've faced recently, or something you've got coming up? Is it from an employer point of view, you're just not sure whether they're the right ones for you? Is it that you're stuck with knowing what that dream job actually looks like, or is it the opposite, that we hear about this war on talent in financial services, that the good ones are going to have the absolute pick of their positions? Maybe they're stuck in between two. So I'm sort of waffling to see if anyone's got any specific questions that they'd want to go through with me now. So maybe have a think and type those through, or type those in, and then Mia can just keep moving on and we can come back to them.
Yeah. So this is more just a taster for what else will be included both in the course and at a high level, some of the areas that I'll be covering off during the 2-day presentation. But uncovering your personal strengths and areas of development, going further into your motivations and values, mastering your mindset. So I've given you a really small taste of what the mindset piece is, and this is extremely important to actually be performing at your best. How to be super organized. So if you are absolutely killing it, you're going to have a huge amount of opportunities come your way, and you need to be organized to be able to stay on top of them all. So I'll be sharing with you guys some of the things that I apply on a daily basis to make sure I can manage absolutely everything that comes my way. Leveraging your network and building meaningful connections. So this one is around understanding the benefits of having a network around you, how you can get a really good mentor in your life, because a mentor can be a massive game changer. I know for me that has been the case, having someone who I can ask any questions of and I highly respect, so that I can always go to that person and say, this is my situation, what do you think, to have some kind of external confirmation or validation around what I'm thinking. How to ace an interview. So if you haven't been through an interview process in a while, or you're really just not sure exactly what you should be doing, I'll be going through some of the key parts around preparing for an interview so that you're much better prepared. And then unlocking your unique value and getting paid what you're worth. So this is around the payment and how you ask for a pay rise, how you know you're actually entitled to one. But also, if you are going through these steps that I'm putting together, you are going to be increasing the chance that your employer is going to recognize exactly how amazing you are, and you won't even need to ask. So it's getting to that point where if you are working in the right kind of environment, if you are performing to your full potential, when it comes annual review time, you'll be prepared, and yes, you'll be ready to go and ask for it if it's not already offered to you. But you'll be increasing the probability of the fact that it might just be offered to you because your employer recognizes the work that you're doing. So they're the main points. The last kind of piece that I wanted to share with you guys and kind of summarize with is that being successful is a choice. Leading a mediocre life is also a choice. So if you are prepared to put the work in that's needed, you can be extremely successful in all areas of your life, and you can reach that self-actualization point. But you do need prepared to put the work in, and understanding and reflecting on where you are currently and the points that you need to be focusing on to increase, again, the skills that are required to reach that dream job position that you might have. Key takeouts and actions. So hopefully I have shared something that is valuable to you guys. Actions are definitely preparing for the workbooks that I think we can send out after this, Steve. But taking the time to actually think about what it is that you really want is the first step. And I would highly encourage you guys to go through the process of completing the Dream Job Design profile, as well as taking the moment to work through what your core values are, because it can be one of those things where once you recognize what your core values are, you can then better articulate your value to a company, particularly if you are looking at going through interview process, but then also recognize businesses that you're better suited to working within. I think that's it.
Well, good news is we have three questions now. Someone just said thanks. So I'll let Mia have a quick drink of water because she's got to start answering questions now. So I won't mention who asked the question, but we'll just read it. Consider everything my core values align with that of the business. Being a small advisory business, there has been no previously tracks laid for the transition from associate to advisor. My exposure for the client interactions and meetings is something which I believe the advisors have struggled with. Not sure how to tackle this issue. Does that sort of make sense to you to unpack a little bit? And we've got two other questions, and the people that ask those other questions, make sure you hang. They're both good ones that I reckon are going to apply to everybody.
Cool. So I think with a lot of businesses, particularly if there hasn't been an associate role before, to understand when an associate should then be moving into an advisor. So there's two parts. So understanding when you graduate to being a fully fledged advisor, or understanding the development that you need within the face-to-face client meetings. So I know from my personal experience being an associate before I was an advisor, you start out your meetings where you are just a second chair, just listening and absorbing the information, and then working through, for us, splitting the meeting to say, all right, who's leading this part of the conversation? And then that's kind of your first step in taking more control over the conversation that might be had during the meeting, to eventually get to the point where, as the associate, you are pretty much running the whole thing. You've just got the advisor sitting there as a backup just in case, and the comfort level because you're still kind of learning the ropes. But then once you get to that point where you are doing all of the prep, you are pretty much doing, 95% of the conversation, then that's when you're getting to that point where you should be doing things either on your own or moving into that advisor level. So it's kind of working through with, the advisors you work with or the managers within the business as to what else you could be doing to increase your skills during the face-to-face client meetings.
So that sort of answers the next question as well. And you have a bit of a fan floating in the background that is an associate advisor now that says their practice basically relies on the associate advisors to do everything, which I think sounds pretty standard.
That's pretty much the job, yeah.
Research, SOAs, business processes, client meetings, sometimes even presenting the SOAs that they've written. This person in transitioning to an AR is excited about starting to bring on their own clients and then inheriting some clients that are already within the business. Yep. At the same time, probably still going to be expected to do everything that they've already been doing. So the question is, do you have any insights on what they should be focusing on the most, maybe now, and then maybe also, how do they convince the business to let them transition to that role, that they shouldn't have to do two roles for the price of one, basically?
Yeah, I think it is a massive challenge. I have worked through the exact same thing, where you are an associate who's kind of running everything in the background for the advisor. And then once you become an advisor, you might still be expected to do the same thing to a degree. I would say from what you should be focusing on, potentially looking at what you can outsource, because if you can come up with the idea around outsourcing to try and get it started before you become an advisor, it makes it much easier. But then also just looking at, well, how, if the business is hiring you in the capacity as an advisor, where is your time better spent? So really should be maximizing the contact with the clients over the back office administration if you can. So it's looking at, well, from a business perspective, where is your money better spent? And you want to make sure that you're kind of targeting that to a degree. It is one of those things that it is quite challenging, and you do need to be sitting down and having the conversation. Hopefully you can have quite a good open conversation with your, the advisor you're working with or the business owner around how you can better manage the transition to becoming an advisor and letting go of some of the responsibilities when it comes to being an associate.
Cool. One more question and then we'll wrap. And for everyone that does need to bail, I know we're on 1 o'clock. Remember, we're going to put the replay of today's webinar up on the YouTube channel. We'll also send an email out to everybody tomorrow with a link to Mia's, a little bit of it, we're calling them toolkit tasters. So something that she's built that's going to go into the toolkit that you would normally have to pay for. We're going to give it to you guys for free to get started. And remember, you can always join us in the Facey group. So if anyone hasn't joined that yet, I'll put the link in to there. And this is maybe part of a segue into our last question, which is, how would you suggest that someone effectively builds their network? By effectively, I mean making sure that the people you are trying to connect to are actually on the same page as you.
Good question. I personally, what I've done is have a lunch, a coffee, or go out for a drink with someone who you have met and you seem to have a connection with. I know from attending things like conferences and or particularly conferences where you get an opportunity to meet a whole heap of people at once, you can quickly kind of work out those who you do connect with a little bit better. And I think you've got to have a good gut feel about people as well. And are they open and honest with what they're discussing with you? Because there are a lot of people out there who love to sell themselves, and they might sound amazing, but when you pull it all back, are they willing to share how they got there? Are they willing to share what they're doing? And you know, are they willing to open up their network and their connections to support you? There are a whole heap of people out there who are absolutely amazing with sharing everything they're doing and opening up or encouraging other people. And I spend a lot of time with those kinds of people because I feel like I am one of those as well. But there are those who want to promote the benefits of other advisors and see other people succeed. And they are the kind of people that you do want in your network because they've got your back. They're the people that are going to be looking for the opportunities and share the opportunities when they come along as well. So I know from being involved with other young advice communities that that's a really good way to sort of get started and start building your network there. And just start small as well. Like, don't think that you need to have a huge network and know everyone straight away. It does sort of naturally happen over time.
And you don't have to like everybody, and everybody doesn't have to like you, and you don't have to network with everyone. And I'm probably a pretty good example of maybe I should give a shit more about what people think about me, but at the end of the day, I don't, right? But I give enormous amounts of shits for the people that I have an enormous amount of time for. And then I really could not give a toss about people who I just don't align with. And I think that's the same. It's a different way to answer the same question, right? Networking is you go to these conferences, even ours, right? And yes, it'll be more narrow and it'll be more focused. There's not going to be anywhere near as many people as the big ones.
Yeah.
But that doesn't automatically mean that because they're in the same place as you that you're going to get on with everyone. And so, you know, there's two ways to look at it. If I can take one thing away from, well, yeah, maybe, but at the end of the day, you only need like one or two really closely aligned either mentors or peers that are at the same stage as you, and then you guys can bounce stuff off each other. So
exactly.
Use them and lose them is a good way to do it, because you don't need to be like that forever. Guys, I'm going to bail. We're going to bail. We're going to let everyone go. Mia, thank you so much again for everything that you're doing, for being a part of our crazy advice movement crew, for joining us at LTMA next year, for building the course, for sharing everything today. If anyone has any questions, you can obviously email us directly. So steve@theadvicemovement.com. And we hope to see you all in next month's webinar. We haven't announced what it is yet, but it'll be the same schedule, last one for the year. Can you believe it? We're almost at the end of the year already. So have a great Thursday afternoon, or whenever the hell you're watching this. And we will talk to you again soon. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Great. Thanks.